Wilma over there at the Highway Church? Oh, she just like, you see her with her fancy jewelry walking around like she got, showing off that money she got from her dead husband? Oh yes, she does wear fancy jewelry. I am not interested in wearing fancy jewelry. I'm only interested in saving more souls and having people understand the wonderful freedom of walking into the doors of Highway Church and singing our beautiful gospel songs. Not like Lorraine, that lowlife who just wants people to come in there and buy more booze and put dollar bills in her tip jar. And I do not drink every morning. I take a little snip right before the show. Well, you would too. I gotta loosen up for my customers. That's when I go into my real creative talent.
Well, hello there, and welcome to another Mission Unstoppable. Today, I have two very special guests with me, and I'm so excited for you to meet them. But first, let me preface today's show by saying that, in my opinion, and dare I say in my guests as well, that there is no tool more powerful for learning than that of storytelling. Scientists now say that they have evidence to support the first story was found in Quebec, France, inside a cave marked 36,000 years ago, depicting the eruption of a volcano and what came to pass afterwards. Fast forward to 700 BC, when the Iliad, the epic poem by Homer, and beloved Aesop's fables were written down first. And that was really powerful, the written word come to pass, because today we can still read those. And my children and grandchildren's first gifts were books, and each of them treasures at least one, if not two, bedtime stories every night. So we learn from story, whether spoken or read. And that is my segue to today's show. So let me say that we are living in uncertain times, a country divided, polarized by hard lines drawn in the sand. People no longer hear one another. They only know if you are with them or against them. Families are being torn apart by politics, but hope is not lost. So stay tuned, stay close for what my guests today are going to tell you. They just might have a solution to breaking down barriers and turning frenemies back to friends. So joining me today is Debra De Liso. She is the creator and executive producer of Small Town. She's an actor, dancer, director, writer, choreographer, and teacher. She's much more than that. Deborah has directed over 700 original one-person plays at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, USC, and professionally. Deborah taught theater workshops and transformed lives in prisons, alongside artists with disabilities and girls with Turner syndrome. Deborah won the 2014 Rainbow Award for the LA Women's Theater Festival for her decades of work, bringing theater to multicultural and diverse communities. That's a mouthful. Suzanne Pashcall, she's one of the producers of Small Town, and Suzanne is a lifelong writer and entrepreneur. She's currently ghostwriting nonfiction books and is a developmental editor, blogger, screenwriter, singer-songwriter, and the author of 5 nonfiction books. And as a former book publisher in Canada, she also now trains authors online in Fresh Voice Academy. So welcome, ladies, to Mission Unstoppable. Yay.
Wow.
Thank you, Frankie.
Wow. Thank you, Frankie. Wow. I love your research and how you launched this. Stories are it, man. That's so true. It connects us. Thank you.
They really do. And, you know, I don't know a child who doesn't want to sit around for story time. And adults too.
Exactly.
You know, we love our books, we love our movies and podcasts. We love all of that. So you saw an issue, you saw a problem, and you said, hey, I might have a solution for that. And using all your skills and talents, connecting the people around you, Deborah, tell us how that happened.
Yes, it's kind of a magical journey, and it started over 10 years ago. In my Saturday afternoon classes, I would rent out a hall in a church in Pasadena and have classes for anybody that couldn't afford the tuition at the colleges I teach at. And so everybody was welcome. And this wonderful, diverse group of actors inspired me to start writing scenes for them. And I didn't even realize exactly what I was doing. But I did include my daughter, who was a teenager at that time, and it was a rough time with us. You know, mothers and daughters in teen years, it's kind of a divisive time. And I longed for her to love me again. I knew she did. But long story short, I started writing scenes. And then I realized these scenes are like people in a small town. and there's like the strippers, because I wrote myself a role. You know, when you're a teacher for decades, your fantasy goes off into like, what's the opposite of teacher? Stripper, right? And so that's my alter ego, and alcoholic stripper. I was raised in a family with an alcoholic dad and a disabled mama. My character later in the film actually has a stroke, because I know what it's like to live with a stroke survivor. So my character's like an amalgamation of my own family members plus summers in a small town in Arizona, Duncan, Arizona. It had a population of less than 1,000, and we'd go there every summer to be with my mom's cowboy brothers and sisters. Mormons, mind you. And I was raised Catholic because my dad was Catholic, mama Mormon. The common denominator was guilt, right? So, but Italian drinking dad. And so I think that, you know, my own character came from my life experience. I wrote these scenes for members of my acting classes and started realizing there's a movie here. And what is this movie about? Why? And scenes would come to me in dreams. You know, it was kind of haunting me. Been rewriting it for 10 years. Finally, what's happening now is this group of amazing women are gathering around the story, and we're all kind of looking at the division in our country, which is sadly not seeming to heal itself. Yeah. And I always kind of love the old movies of Frank Capra and, you know, these wonderful old classic American films. And what is it? It's a hero's journey, but it's so much about the ensemble. And so I just, through a lot of molding and shaping, realized this is a story for now. And getting in touch with Suzanne, we lucked out and met each other on a seminar that we took, and we're like, oh, two silver foxes. Yes. Yeah, grandma, I see we're all three of us are grandmas, by the way, Frankie. I love that we're grandmas. And It's like, I see you. I see the power of you in this decade of your life. You got mad projects to do. We have supported each other beautifully. So this group of women really is what's making me go, you know what? You've written something good, and we can help you make it, because making a movie by yourself doesn't happen.
No.
So
no.
That's kind of the initial a push, and why now.
I lived in a small town in the summers too. We had a farm, and so we went out to the farm on the weekends, and I was listening to some of the people, you know, the stories of their small town adventure. And it reminded me last night, I started laughing because, you know, there's characters. So there's Bear and Digger and you know, Rat and whatever, like all these kids on street corners with these nicknames. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it was so funny. And
I love it.
But yeah, they're small town people. And you're Madame Wu. We had Mama Wu's Chinese restaurant.
Oh, you did. See, so it's such a great name, isn't it?
Yeah,
so, and you know what? In small towns, they don't have a lot of diversity, but they know how good Chinese food is. And so you usually find a good Chinese restaurant.
Well, the Chinese built the railroads, and so they're in every small town throughout America and Canada, right?
Exactly.
And one stayed to cook, right? You always have a restaurant there. That's so interesting. It's a funny premise. So let's talk about the premise. You have, you know, the strippers, and you have the church folk, and you have two moms.
Yes. Well, the inciting incident is that Lorraine comes to work one night, and her daughter, Lexi, who's the singing tattooed waitress, and she's fine with that, she's starting to take her clothes off. And Lorraine goes on stage and grabs her by the hair. And what the hell are you doing on this stage? I've kept you off this stage your whole life. And Lexi says, I'm just making enough money to get out of town. And I say, that's what I said 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
and we start a wrestling match into the middle of the highway. So the church people come out and gawk, and they're like, oh, that's the low life trash. And long story short, she walks over to the church side into the arms of the new preacher, which is like betrayal to me. And then I can't find her. So my character sobers up. And over the course of 1 week, well, the sheriff says the church people are like trying to close the cantina down. No stripping, no alcohol on this side, this part of the highway, which they can do if you have a city ordinance, right? That's the best business in town. They're trying to close it.
Right.
So Lorraine has a lucid dream, which is often how I would write these stories. And she imagines the strippers and the church folk doing a show together and turning the cantina into a legit theater. So it doesn't have to close. She also can lure her daughter back into a real show where she is featured and her voice is featured. And my daughter is actually a gorgeous singer. So then we have the Misfits. It's a ridiculous series of rehearsals and nothing is going right. And then they don't have an audience. But on the day of the show, which is the trial of whether this stripping cantina can become a theater, Sheriff Jack arrests these hippies that are out on McMahon's ranch because they're trespassing and they're all hallucinating. They're like, they've dropped acid and they're all high. But he goes, well, I won't make you pay the fine if you come to, we got a dinner theater in town. And so they're the audience. And it's kind of like the Full Monty. It's just like a wacky.
We're going to be the band.
Yeah. And
we should mention too, this is set in the 60s.
Yes, it's set in the 60s.
Yeah.
So and we have some sites too for a lot. If this little indie movie takes off, like Fargo, and then they made the TV series.
Yeah.
We're thinking that the next season, the first season would be introducing each of the characters and how did they get to that small town? How did that person end up in that small town, right? Madame Wu, for example. And then the next season could be a decade later and a decade later and a decade later until small town is not so small anymore. And we can kind of look at the overview of America and America's small towns. So there you have the picture. I don't want to give away there's a lot of surprise elements that come into play, but I would call it an inspirational comedy is the genre.
Do you think people will see themselves?
I hope.
I hope so.
I hope. Big time. And, I grew up in Walnut Creek, which was a smaller town in Northern California, but have been living in LA for many decades. And I honestly feel like a lot of the small town people in our country, because I'm still connected with my cousins and other friends, don't feel heard. They don't feel like their voices are heard right now. And I think some big city people maybe don't listen, and vice versa. So this movie is hopefully to capture the hearts of both our rural communities and our urban communities. And we'll see how the arc of, if this becomes a television series, we are looking for investors, television producers, all of that, right? Somebody that can see the vision for the longevity of this, because it's really about healing. There's so much great stuff on TV, but there's also a lot of there's some crappy stuff and there's a lot of violence. And
this is family stuff, and there's not a lot of that.
No, there's not a lot. It's family stuff, but it's spicy. It's spicy family stuff. Yes.
Yeah. It's interesting. Your background. My husband was brought up Mormon. His mother's side was Catholic, father's side.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And she moved around, married 5 times, ended up in a really small town in Idaho.
Okay. Yeah.
Excuse me. And I think, we talk about this polarization because his family is thinking one way, and it's the church is having, there's no way she would think any way other than what the church tells her what to think.
Yeah.
You know? And it's like, well, can't you just have thought of your own without the church. But no, because their whole life is so integral. All of the community, everything that they do is church. Right?
Yes.
Their identity is wrapped up in that. And so, I wonder, how do you reach those people? Like, I think of Imagine Dragons. Like, how did he get out and become this great big band in the middle of being a Mormon, in the middle of, Salt Lake City? Like, it's an incredible story, really, when you think of it, how some people can do it and others, they can't. But I would
agree. And I would never argue with anyone's faith. I think whatever you have that helps you get you through the night is all right. Right.
Yeah.
But I agree with you that sometimes it can replace your own individual identity. And the work that I do in solo performance is actually helping people tell their own autobiographical stories. And I'm blessed. I work with many communities in prison as well, right? Talk about the population that has the lowest self-esteem are women in prison. I can just tell you that right now. But I work with a lot of young people at USC and the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. And I wish I had, in my early 20s, a class where I could actually write a play about myself and who I was in the world, because it forces you to have a point of view. And I do think that people in congregations, it's easier, isn't it, to say, well, this is what the pastor said I should do with my week and what I should read and what I should learn. And it becomes very limited to, one leader. And, I don't know. I think if there's anything that inspires me, Frankie, and Suzanne knows this, is for people to find their own voice.
Yeah.
So this film is like a little microcosm of a bunch of very, very divided people.
I'm really excited about it. I love everything about it. I love, who you think the cast should be. I love the concept. I love the whole look and feel of it. It's very exciting. Suzanne, what attracts you and excites you about it, being involved in this?
Oh, well, first of all, just the personal connection that Deborah and I have established, and we help each other with our scripts. All the women on the team are creators in one way or another and have amazing backgrounds. And I think we're all compelled by our connection with Deborah as a fellow creator to work on this project with her. But she also has given very generously to me in projects I'm doing as well. It's a very collaborative, sharing, caring kind of community to be in, which not a lot of work communities are. So I feel really blessed by being part of this team for that reason. But in terms of small town more specifically, I was born and raised in a very small town in Kansas. I went to high school in a much smaller town, a Mennonite town, and have had some experiences. And all of my family are living in small towns in Western Kansas. And I'm one of the few of us that's kind of gotten out. I'm the Lexi, but love going back, and love connecting with those people. I see a lot of my family in small town in the cast. I see a lot of my small town. In fact, so much so that it inspired a campaign for us to do to sort of start creative conversations around small towns and values and positive ways of dealing with our differences. And we're calling it My Small Town. So I made, at age 64 and almost 65, I made my first TikTok.
I love that. Yeah.
And it's called My Small Town. And I tell a little story that is so analogous. It's crazy. I woke up in the middle of one night. I never even told Deborah the story, and went, this story is just like in a parallel track to the small town script. And so I made a little video telling the story. And at the end, we invite people to do what's called a stitch on TikTok, where you respond and tell your small town story. And so we just launched that earlier this morning on an IG Live, and we're hoping to see lots of people share their small town stories and lessons they've learned, and and how the, values they learned in small town life or visiting other people in small towns has carried on in their lives. And so I feel like this really intense connection because of my life and my life story. And I've ended up living in, New York and Toronto and Seattle and now, Phoenix. And I've lived in a lot of big cities. One thing we like to talk about too is that, big cities are really a combination of a whole bunch of small towns. Right. In New York, where I lived, there was a neighborhood and it was a small town and we all knew each other and we looked after each other. So the concept of what it means to have unity in community, is present in all kinds of communities of interest, even if it isn't a physical small town, right?
Do you think they're changing small towns? Are they changing? I mean, I guess in the 80s when I had my kids, I knew all my neighbors. We had an open door policy. Just come in and get coffee, hear your kids, right? I don't know any neighbors now. None.
Yeah. It's more like that for me as well. And I live in the east side of LA, and it's more like that. I do have to say the last two Halloweens, I was at my partner's, one of his best friend's house, sitting on the porch in Boston, giving out candy.
Nice. Yeah.
And it was like, it was a stoop in Boston. And that's where I wanted to go again for Halloween. So that was awesome.
Yeah, I don't get anybody for Halloween, but I kind of live in the country, but there's no way to walk around. But are small towns full of old people or young people because housing is more affordable? Like what do you think the makeup is today? Any idea?
I think it's so region dependent and it's so location dependent. There are small towns all across Kansas that are just disappearing, completely dying, but then, there's all kinds of, do you remember the stories that came out early in the COVID isolation where people sold their city houses and moved out to the country?
Yes.
Yeah. And so I think we don't know yet, but we'll know, in the coming years, how that out migration from cities, where those people went and what kind of communities are establishing. Also, there's all kinds of really interesting new kinds of small towns, these 55 plus communities. Mm-hmm. And I find those very interesting in terms of, again, community of interest, people of a certain age and stage in life kind of getting together in a small community, and they have all the things there that they love and that are relevant to their lives now. Yeah. And so that seems interesting to me. I know in our neighborhood right here, we actually know a lot of our neighbors, and they're almost all young people with little kids who love our puppies. And so but so I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's as easy. There's so many different trends, right? And there's so many different things happening. I heard too that there's another new community that Disney is developing that's, it seems kind of strange to me, these little fantasy communities.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That sounds like a science fiction movie to me. But, LA's housing cost is driving people out.
Yeah.
Upper middle class people can't afford to buy a new house here. It's awful. My students who are all going to be in student loan debt, where are they going to live? They're going to have to live in an apartment with 4 other people for the next 5 years, unless they have rich folks.
That's almost everywhere, I think. And
New York is
always has been I found very expensive. But even here, you leave school $30,000-$50,000 in debt.
Yeah,
and houses are hard to find, one under $1 million. Yeah. And that used to be like rich people's houses. Now they're just poor people's houses.
So things are shifting and changing. And I think that's also why it's a good time for this film, because this film is about people that don't get along starting to have a conversation. So let's see if city folk move into rural communities. They may have to be vetted, right? Yeah. Before people trust them. And that at the core of the film is that I can't find any better quote than Maya Angelou's, "We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike." And that's what people find out in this film, because it's the truth. We want safety, we want to be loved, we want our family to be safe, we want our family to love us. And when we get, and even the bar people that are there as single people, the bar is their family. So
Right.
they're looking for the community as well.
Yeah. I have a girlfriend, she's starting a community, Golden Life community. I don't know if you've heard of it yet. It's for women 55 and older who are widowed, divorced, alone.
Wow.
And
Great.
Full community and a physical community. They've got 18 acres around the Texas-New Mexico border that they're going to be making these golden palaces. They're called like casitas or something like that. Isn't that fabulous?
That's
what we've
amazing.
talked about doing. Like when we're old, and if we are alone, that we would get together somewhere in Arizona or New Mexico and have a commune. Commune, right?
Yes. Well, what would be a blast is that we could take our small town variety show into those communities, because we did a launch party and we had a theater. There's going to be a theater. Yeah, we could have a traveling variety show. It's like a 1960s old-fashioned variety show.
Awesome.
And wouldn't that be great to go into those communities?
It would be amazing.
We have a couple of really funny reels of clips from the launch night variety show that are really funny.
Oh, I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. Well, I mean, if you guys go on YouTube or check out Debra De Liso's videos, and you can see her in character, and she's very funny. You're very funny.
Thank you.
Very funny, very good, very talented.
I enjoy pretending like I'm really drunk. It's a
it's a lot more fun than really being drunk.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah.
Okay, so we're looking for, we can't call them investors. What can we call them? Contributors.
Contributors. Yeah.
Contributors. You're looking for
and
what?
And investors, but for the crowdfunding campaign, it's contributors.
I see. Okay. So anybody who thought, oh, wow, you know what? I'd like to be an angel investor, or I'd like to be a part of a Hollywood movie, or how exciting I could be, somebody a producer, they can get involved, and they can actually be at the start of making a movie. And there's cool prizes. Now there's cool prizes for people who raise money. Let's talk about that. I love it. Some people need a little incentive.
Suze.
Well, so yes, we have a variety of perks that people can get on the campaign. And we're putting together a prize package, which we can't really say all the specific details of yet, because we're still trying to decide how we want to do it and put together the best possible prize package we can, but it'll be good. For people who we have a couple of teams, fundraising teams on the campaign that represent the strippers side and the church folk side, and they're in a competition to see who can raise the most. And the team that raises the most will each get a prize, and the individual on each team that raises the most will get a prize package as well. So that's kind of a fun thing we're doing. And it's not about picking a side because that's who you relate to or you feel like you are. It's just like, have you ever wanted to play a role? Just be an actor, have some fun. We're just competing with each other for the fun of it. So we have a list leaderboard, and anyway, it's all on the campaign side. It's a lot of fun. We also have a lot of what I would like to call experiential perks. I've been doing crowdfunding for about 12 years for a bunch of different initiatives, creative initiatives. And physical perks are cool. We have mugs and, small town mugs and stuff like that. But the really cool stuff is that we have this amazing asset here with Deborah, who is this amazing teacher and mentor. And we are offering some very, reasonably priced, much less than she normally charges on her site, creative consults with Deborah, and opportunities to take this solo performance course that you can purchase at a deal price for contributing to the campaign. So all kinds of cool stuff. for sure.
Yes,
One-
if anybody has ever thought, I have such a story, I have really an interesting life story, but I'm not a writer. Who cares about my story? All the stuff that comes up that blocks us. My online course, Suzanne designed it. She's got this brilliant organizational brain that I don't have. But she took my stuff and created a course for me. And this is for first-time writers or professional writers who really have never put together their own life stories. And I've got videos and steps toward that. And I think it's only $100, right? And it's quite an extensive course. So it's a good way to just go online and at your own time write your own story. So and I have a lot of models and examples and tips. So I hope that people that listen to your show, Frankie, might really respond to that. Yeah. So it helps the movie. Then they're part of making the movie and creating their own script.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah, I love that. I love that.
We know one of the prizes that will be central in the prize package is going to be an opportunity to be an extra in the film. So.
Yes. Yes. So think about that. They'll either be a barfly or a church member or a hallucinating hippie.
No experience required.
Yeah.
What would you choose? What would you choose?
I know. What would you do? What would you choose? Exactly.
I can't decide. That's awesome. Oh, wow. I'm so excited about this. And I really, really hope that all that money comes in and that this becomes something, because I can see it. I can see it already. It's going to be an incredible show. It'll be incredible. I mean, I think the TV show might even be more fun than the movie, but because you really get to develop all those characters, and there's some good characters.
Yes, yes. And then I guess you should let people know how to get in touch with us and the campaign. I don't know, Suze, if you want to, I guess it's right there. It's on the chat already, right?
Yeah.
Get in touch with us.
I think it's on Frankie's page.
Excellent.
We have the link to the campaign.
Excellent.
Yeah, the link to the campaign on the Good Radio Network. If you go to the Good Radio Network website, goodradionetwork.com. If you go to Facebook.com/the Good Radio Network. If you go to, it's everywhere. It's going to be everywhere too. So,
oh, thank you, and
Frankie,
thank you
so much, Frankie.
Yes,
thank you
and I would love to hear from your listeners what their thoughts about the movie, because that inspires us to keep going. It's not easy. And so we want to hear from your listeners if they feel like this is worthwhile.
What's your timeline, do you think?
Well, in my dreams, I would love to start shooting in May. That would be my dream. Yeah. So, but we're gathering a beautifully creative team, but we're still in search. We have some amazing people interested. We're just interviewing people.
Okay.
Yeah, we're at a really good place right now. We just need to have money to pay them.
Yeah.
Yes. We have some really fine actors attached already to the film. And
part of this is that we in the church. So I, in my 20s, did a couple of low budget horror films that unfortunately the thing I'm most known for. And my Scream Queen girlfriends, because we're all still buddies from 40 years ago.
That's awesome.
They're going to be church members in the movie.
Oh, all right.
And also Michael Berryman, who he's an extraordinary actor. He was in Cuckoo's Nest and The Hills Have Eyes. He and I know each other from horror conventions. He has signed on to be in this. So the church people are going to be filled with horror stars.
Isn't that great? It's like, what a juxtaposition.
Yes. Bizarre.
So
just
neat.
one of the many bizarre things.
All right, girls. Well, thank you so much for coming today and joining me today. And Facebook, be kind, do your job.
Thank you so much, Frankie. What a pleasure to meet you. We hope to see you on the set. We hope to see you in the theater.